The Box Seat, brought to you by our stable of sponsors. Hi everyone, welcome to this edition of your Box Seat. Yes, Michael Guerin, we are back after the winter hiatus. What have you been up to?
I went to a $2 million race, Gregory, on Saturday night, which doesn't happen every day of the week. We'll talk shortly about the Eureka. It was really good. It was really good, even though from a New Zealander's point of view, there wasn't any Kiwi interest in it as in breeding or ownership, but I thought they put on a good show. And now we start our show as a New Zealand harness racing. So I get the feeling, Greg, with Muscle Mountain back this week, momentum's going to start to build. The big question for the harness industry, before we talk about the things we may have missed, is when do we start to see the New Zealand Cup winning chances? Not saying they can't win the horses racing at Addington this week, but the big three in the market, Akuta, Self Assured and Copy That, it's almost like, Gregory, the season starting a bit later every year, because obviously now we have a race by Grins in April and an Auckland Cup in May. So our open class season being extended, and I think many trainers are just shortening up the front part of it.
Yeah, absolutely they are. So what can you look forward to on your first show of the Box Seat for the new season? We'll have a look at the road to the IRT New Zealand Cup. Where are things at thus far? Blair Orange is back. He's been away at the World Drivers' Championship. We'll hear from him about that experience. The Renwick Farms Dominion, as Michael's just mentioned, one of the oldest races at Addington Raceway is the Ordeal Cup. We'll talk about that for this week. The Eureka wrap-up that Michael was at, he can tell us what the atmosphere was like there. We go round to the start with Ricky Donnelly, which is a great insight into what happens on a race night for a mobile start. And your first win is important. Riley Harrison got it done at Addington Raceway, so we'll hear from her about that opportunity and how that came about, because of course she was driving for the master trainer in Paul Nairn. Right, let's go to a couple of races we've had thus far. Mossdale Ben's always been a really nice horse, Michael. This is him winning the Kurau Cup fresh up. Comes 4 wide here. Ben Hope, he now gets an opportunity to drive in the great race. Greg and Nina have always held this horse in pretty decent regard, and he blazed past Harrison here. Deny Everything of the yellow colours was third, and we'll have a look at his second start shortly, which guaranteed him that start in the Cup, but that was a pretty good way to kick his season off.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said for having horses fit early in the season. A lot of the horses who are winning these races, and there's no guarantee they can't win bigger races, but we'll see him coming up at Addington and winning an automatic qualifier on the Morris Homes. But you get them fit now and you win $2, $3, $20, $30,000 races, Greg. That's as good as winning a Kaikoura Cup. So here he is pulling out of the 1-1 in the Morris Homes. The big surprise out of this race, that Anything Goes, who led, did burn early, didn't manage to hold on for the short odds punters. They did go a good time, 3:12, but I think there's a lot of merit and a lot of smart planning from trainers, and it definitely helps if you're a beach trainer, because you can get them so much fitter in winter, to getting up and running early. Not every horse, once the All-Stars horses come back and Copy That comes south and Old Town Road joins the fray and BD Joe's back this week, not every horse is going to beat those horses. And a horse like Mossdale Ben, he might end up winning a Invercargill Cup. He might end up winning something. I'm not sure what he'll win. But I absolutely think not all trainers can aim all horses at the same races, even if they're open class. Grady's in the Cup. Ben's a good young guy. He's a proper Group 1 driver now because he's had that experience with Muscle Mountain. And I think it's really cool for Greg and Nina, because we forget how good a trainer they are of paces. Yeah, they've had horses like Mossdale Connor who run third in Victoria Cups, and they've had AG's White Sox, who's obviously a genuinely good open class horse. But when you hear Greg and
you
Nina,
think Trotter.
You do, of course you do. So it's great to see them. They'll head to Cup Week now, Greg, all things being equal, with horses in both the feature races. Not many stables you can say that about.
No, that's right. And here's another one of theirs, not necessarily going to be in the Cup, but he went around in all those country cups. This is a trial from Rangiora last week, and more important than probably Homebush Lad winning it is who was placed in behind. That's BD Joe in front, Republican Party, who resumes this week coming down the outside. Of course, he was runner-up in the Derby behind Akuta and won the junior free-for-all on New Zealand Cup Day last year. So that's a pretty important trial, as was the trial of Copy That, even though there was only 2 in it. Maurice McKendry coming out in the media saying he believes he can win another cup and become just the 4th horse to be able to achieve 3 of them.
Well, he's only going to have to beat the same field as last year. Predominantly, I mean, Akuta's going to be in there. He ran 4th last year. Self-assured, I think he was 5th last year. They're at the top of the market. Old Town Road was in the Cup last year. Maybe you'll add Swayze, but there's a little bit of pushing and shoving there around Jason Grimson's DQ, then subsequent appeal. So who will Swayze be with? But there's not going to be a whole clump of new horses coming to the New Zealand Cup. And the Mosdale Ben type horses who are joining the fray aren't the scary horses. So I think Copy That's never going to have a better chance, or we wouldn't have had a horse with a better chance in a long time of winning 3 cups. I know Terra to Love did do it, but he's probably the best or second best horse in the race. And when we see his trial, which is going to be largely irrelevant because there's only 2 in it, I think that they can get him there on the same form as last year. Absolutely, he becomes the horse to beat.
What do you make of his build-up this year? Because obviously Ray's decided not to go to Australia, but coming to Christchurch earlier, I don't think it'll hinder his chances at all.
No, I think getting south's important.
Yeah.
He also had a little mini bleed last year and still recovered. I thought his preparation last year was very strange, and it worked. So he's had vastly different preparations for his last 3 Cup campaigns. It's an intriguing cup because at some stage a dominant horse usually emerges. I just don't think we've got a dominant horse because there's 3 different types of horses. I still think the best version of Akuta is when he doesn't work early, and I think his biggest wins have been when he hasn't worked early, including the Jewels, including the Derby, including the Taylor Mile and the Auckland Cup.
But yeah, all of those big ones.
Exactly.
He's done exactly the same thing.
That makes you vulnerable to a horse who can lead, because Copy That's led the last 2 cups and the race by Grins, and he's an incredibly hard horse to catch in front. So do you start driving your horse to undo your rival? Really interesting. It's going to be fun going through the whole process together, and I think the big winner out of how things are shaping up could be Methven.
Yes.
I think Methven are going to have a really good
Well, you've spoken
cup.
to Mark Purdon about the potential of both Akuta and Self-Assured making their racetrack returns there? Well, potentially.
Well, Mark and Nathan are going through a strange time because they're moulding together 2 different training philosophies. Now, Nathan trains slightly different from his dad, and I think after a year together, it'll probably mould into one philosophy. But at the moment, Nathan doesn't work them quite as hard as his dad, and therefore the horses are coming up slower. And then Mark gets his hands on them because Nathan's gone to Victoria where they're having some success with Sherlock and High Energy, and Mark will work them harder. So I think you're not going to see those horses out as early, and Mark absolutely doesn't want to take them to the Canterbury Classic and give them a headache. So unless he's really happy with them very shortly, because they need to be trialling at least 2 weeks before the Canterbury Classic, we could see them head to Methven, which would be wonderful for Methven. In saying that, Self-Assured's been there twice before, yet to win the Methven Cup. As I said, lots of moving parts to this, and whether the North Island races hold up. Anna Donnelly sent a couple of horses to Australia.
Well, can go. Let's just talk about him briefly. Spoke to her over the weekend. Obviously didn't start on Saturday night because he wouldn't load. He was in a trailer float. He's a big horse, as you know. He thought he was going to bang his head. They couldn't get him on the float. So I still haven't heard whether they've given him a clearance to be able to race this Friday night, because if he doesn't start shortly, he's going to be in a parapain for the Victoria Cup, and we'll see most of his rivals go around from the Len Smith on Saturday night. The other horse that's probably jumped up a little bit, and you spoke to Stephen Boyd, as I did on SENZ Trots Talk on Sunday, McAndrew Aviator. Now, he's arrived in his barn prominently because he had an injury. Kirsten Green had done a magnificent job with him, and he needed the water walker, and then they thought about it and thought, well, hang on a minute, we need to travel up and down all the time. Why can't we just leave that with you, Boydie? And he said, OK, I'll have a crack. Well, he had a crack, and he was very good the other night. He's
very fast. I almost feel sorry for Kirsten or any trainer in Southland because it's so hard to train there and win at Addington. not once. You could do it once easily, but to do it 4 or 5 times over the spring would be incredibly difficult. And I love Southland harness racing so much, and instantly my brain goes back to David Moss or decades earlier Cardigan Bay, but you start to wonder, are those days gone? And not just for Southland. I mean, you know, if you had a horse in Queensland, you wouldn't take it to New South Wales every week and race it and then take it home again. So I hope eventually he does head back to his home, to Kirsten, down there in Southland, but hard to argue with the move of moving him north. I think it's really interesting that the big three is so dominant in any market. Any other horse really deserves to be $10.
Well, talking about that market, so $3.50 at the moment, a Cooter. What have we got? Copy that at $5, Self Assured at $5, Old Town Road $7.50. And speaking with John Dickey, he's going to be late to the party, if you like, too, and believes he'll only need 2 or 3 runs. The other interesting thing this year, Michael, is because the Cup's as late as it possibly can be, being the 14th of November, that means you can either go to Kaikoura or there's a race at Addington on about the 3rd of November.
That's going to hurt Kaikoura. Absolutely. People prefer to go to Addington.
In saying that, this year there's a lot more depth to not only the New Zealand Cup, but the junior free-for-all, I believe. You know, there's going to be a string of horses that can't get a start in the Cup that will go into that. And often that race, although it wasn't last year, lacks in numbers quite often. But I don't think that'll be the case this year. By the way, nominations close for the IRT New Zealand Cup, the Renwick Farms Dominion, and of course the Graphite Developments Futurity on Thursday. So we'll have more of an idea of who's nominated and who hasn't been. But talking to Brian Rabbit, the numbers are looking pretty good at the moment.
Yeah, well, the great thing about it is if you've got a horse who's worth having a crack, Self Assured, Akuta and Copy That are wonderful horses, but they're not Lazarus. They're not like, well, there's no point doing this. We're not going to beat Lazarus over 2 miles. They are beatable. All 3 of them are beatable. Kango's beaten them all before, and he's no champion. So there is that thought that, yep, let's roll the dice with McAndrew Aviator. Let's have a crack. BD Joe's beaten them all before. So it's an open cup, but most people are going to want to back one of those 3 horses. Yeah. And we're not going to see those 3 horses for quite a while. So getting in this week and getting in early like Mossdale Ben's a good idea. It's going to get very congested in that space through October. And yeah, that is really interesting, the Cup being on the 14th with that Addington race, because it's not going to ruin the Kaikoura Cup. Kaikoura is a special event all of its own. But I think if you were to rank the top 5 favourites for the Cup, I'll be stunned if more than one of them heads to Kaikoura.
I think the other crucial part is having Australian participation, and Rock and Roll Do last year added so much to the build-up to it. And Loyalist, who was formerly with the Hopes and has won a Redcliffe Cup, so is a group race winner in the last 12 months, has been nominated, and Swayze's a chance. So I think it's imperative to build the brand, if you like, Australasian-wide, and I'm hoping that does happen.
Absolutely, no doubt. In both codes. We need it for the Karaka Millions as well. You bring one Australian, it's just massive for the way they view the race. You know, Sky Channel over there drives a lot of coverage for our races and therefore a lot of money, which it's really hard to drive it without an Australian horse. If I ring the Daily Telegraph in Sydney and say there's an Australian horse in the New Zealand Cup, would you like a story? Yes. If I ring about the New Zealand Cup, they're like, well, not really. So it's a huge determinant. I'm a massive fan of Addington or Harness Racing New Zealand saying, we'll pay your flights, but you pay us back dollar for dollar. Because you get about 10,000 for starting in the New Zealand Cup.
Yes, you do.
So you can't miss.
I think it's even 12 this
exactly.
year, something like that.
You get enough that it pays for everything. So all you're saying is if you turn up and you get injured and you can't race, we'll cover your flights. No one ever pays any money for these things. It is going to be interesting to see whether any of the Australians turn up. Just to clarify this for people, because it's your money. Jason Grimson got disqualified recently, not for a racing offence, but for being involved in a fight on a race night. Now, he got disqualified for 12 months. He appealed last week to the Queensland Racing Appeals Panel, and if he gets that reduced down to a fine and a suspended sentence, then he'll be able to train Swayze. If he doesn't, they'll need a new trainer for Swayze, and with the DQ, you can't be any of the horses. So that could be a severe change of form. I'm telling you that because I don't want you jumping into a horse who may be trained by a totally different person.
And is $11 in the market.
Exactly. So harness racing has this habit, and I've dealt with it a lot in the last couple of weeks, of everybody trying to pretend these things don't happen. Now, we've got to stop that shit. It's just nonsense.
Yeah.
When people get disqualified and it's in a public forum, You talk about it. People make mistakes. The greatest trainer in New Zealand history got disqualified once. Let's not hide from all this rubbish and pretend it didn't happen and run around being scared of it. When people get disqualified, Peter Moody had a $5,000 fine last week for having a horse with something in its system. He's a legend. It happens to everybody. Let's just please, as we start this new season, stop all this nonsense of pretending that the people we like or don't like are wrong or right because we like or don't like them. The punters, and we've got new bosses now for the industry at Entain, they want turnover to be driven. That's based on one thing and one thing only, information. Tell people the truth, let them choose to back Swayze or not back Swayze or whoever else gets in trouble next, because people get in trouble all the time. But pretending things don't happen because it's awkward for the industry is just nonsensical crap. And what you end up doing is people go, well, these people don't tell me the truth. Now, whether that's the box seat or the New Zealand Herald or Harness Racing New Zealand, if you're not willing to tell people the truth, then give the job to someone who will. Because we can't survive as this small an industry pretending things we don't like didn't happen.
No, correct. Well said too. Looking forward to delving into all of those sorts of issues throughout our season on the box seat. Our leading driver for the last 5 years, Blair Orange, recently made his way to the World Drivers' Championship. He was back at Addington Raceway last Friday night and I got a chance to chat to him about his experience. Blair, back from an experience of a lifetime on picking?
Yeah, no, it was a really good trip, Greg, and you know, it's a different style of racing, and we really enjoyed the time away for sure.
All right, tell me about the series. I know it was over 20 races, 4 days. Some of those racetracks you would never have even seen before, let alone the horses, and you know, trying to get an idea of how they're going to go. You hadn't interpreted day one, but after that, no.
Yeah, really lucky to have Astrid help me out the first day. So that was a big plus, as you know, you could communicate quite clearly with the trainers. But yeah, from then on we're on our own, and really struggled the third day with the French-speaking side of Germany, and yeah, that was just good luck.
All trotters?
Yes, all trotters.
Yeah. Now you won a race on a horse that I think they said to you needed to have a sit, and you ended up sitting park. So you did what Mark Purdon did back in Canada. You got a win, which I'm sure was really satisfying, particularly with your mum and dad and your mates there.
Yeah, for sure. You know, just lucky to be on the series and win a race was a pretty cool feeling actually, because you know, obviously mum and dad and A. Stewart, who's up with there in support, and just the crowds, they really love their horses, and any winner on any track, and the crowd just stand up and you know, they obey and clap and yell and scream, and it was pretty cool.
Blair, what did you learn on the trip?
Well, just little different things. You know, it was quite cool to watch some of the good drivers, and you know, just take things from them about what they done, and yeah, so you know, you never stop learning, and you know, just different things different drivers done from other countries. You know, you picked up little bits and sods from them.
What about representing your country? And I know that you made the tournament side as an 18-year-old footballer, so you know you'd had that recognition before. But to be able to do that, put the colours on, they play the national anthem, all of that stuff, it's pretty special, isn't it?
Oh, for sure. You know, representing your country in anything's you know, a real achievement and something you take great pride in. So you know, as I say, I was just lucky to be chosen for it, and you know, really enjoyed the experience.
All right, you're back now. I suppose you just put your head down. We're into the spring racing. The better horses and stuff likely to come out now, and you're going to get an opportunity with Copy That to create history. Yeah,
I'm looking forward to the spring racing again, Greg, and yeah, the good horses are starting to come out slowly. So you know, get on some of them. Be looking forward to, and yeah, Copy That obviously going for his third cup in a row, and yeah, hopefully we can.
So that was Blair Orange talking about his experiences overseas and up the wires. That's what he wanted me to say because, of course, as I mentioned there, he's a former national representative in rugby league.
Yeah, so that's two black jerseys for him. I mean, look, it's a wonderful thing, the World Drivers' Champs. I'm not really sure what it means. I mean, it means a lot if you win.
Well, you need a lot of luck, quite clearly, because it all comes down to the horses you get, and they're all trotters on tracks that he'd never seen before, and he only had the interpreter for the first day, which made that quite a challenge.
That's a real harness racing story. I don't think they send the best drivers in the world, but we sent our best driver. I mean, you know, for example, Dexter didn't represent the US. I think it's wonderful people get to do it, and I'm glad Blair got to do it because he deserves to do it. But yes, As world championships go and lots of different things, I think it's a very unusual world championship. And as I said, you tend to only remember them if one of the New Zealanders wins.
All right, we're on the road to the IRT New Zealand Cup. It's also the road to the Renwick Farms Dominion. Let's go back to Mystic Max winning a race named after one of your favourite trotters. Basil Dean, of course, the record holder that went 3:15.3 one day at Addington when no one could believe it. This horse has got real ability. He's trained by Michael Purdon, of course. He selected him himself. He owns him as well. Natalie was driving on this occasion. He's a pretty nice horse, but the 4-year-old year is always a challenge.
Well, look, he falls into a crop where there's going to be two enormous big guns, obviously Muscle Mountain and hopefully Bolt for Brilliance, and then everybody else is in play because Love and the Port won the Rowe Cup, and he's probably not that much better than Love and the Port. So I think that Love and the Port victory in the Rowe Cup is important. It lets people think, okay, I can win a Dominion like Amaretto's son did, rather than I absolutely can't win one because I'm up against Lyle Creek or Take a Moment or Mombay. So, yep, it's in play. Muscle Mountain's obviously off the unruly this week, or on the unruly.
What do you make of that? I mean, yes, he's missed away in a couple of big races. Is it a smart decision? Do you believe he'll stay there if he steps away in his first 2 or 3 runs? Do you believe that they'll take him off that?
There's no point putting him on the unruly then taking him off it. That just teaches him, you know, that I can start from here, but I can't start on the front line. Once he's on there, he has to stay there.
Well, he has to, what, in your mind? Or because if they go back to the Stipes, they would be able to take him off if he does step away?
Exactly, but there's no point doing that. I mean, there's nothing worse than saying, OK, we'll give you lots
of... Is he good enough to give them a start?
He's good enough to give them a start because he lost 50 and was enormous in the Rowe Cup. He's not good enough to give the best version of Bolt for Brilliance a start, who's a very good standing start horse. So we'll see how it works through, but I reckon there's no point putting him on the unruly, then taking him back off and chucking him on the front line for the Dominion. If he's learning to start off the back line, you can start him from there. In saying that, the Dominion's not like the New Zealand Cup where the horse who leads wins. It doesn't happen to be that way. A lot of horses have come from off the speed to win the Dominion. I think it's a smart move. Ben and Greg and Nina know the horse better than anybody else. If that's where they think he's best suited, you have to trust that they are right.
Yep, the ITM Ordeal Cup, which was won last year by Muscle Mountain, of course the 3 previous by Sunday Sun, is clearly a good lead-up race for the Dominion. Here's Muscle Mountain at the trials, just to see where he's at leading into this week, and he comes up on the inside here and wins really nicely. Midnight Dash was second, it went round last week. And was okay. Gold Bullion's actually a horse that I'm looking forward to seeing back at the races in third, but he did this pretty comfortably, Michael, getting home in 28.4, but he's just a class horse and I'm looking forward to seeing him back at the races.
It's crucial for this crop that Bolt for Brilliance comes back with Sunday Sun now.
So
retired.
Where's he at?
He's at Tony's and they're happy with him and everything sounds okay. Obviously he's not going to be turning up in the South Island anytime soon, but they are aiming at the Cup Carnival. It's crucial because otherwise this horse will win almost every race it starts.
Well, he's $1.70 to win the Renwick Farms Dominion,
yeah,
$4 Bolt for Brilliance.
Which you can't take. He's just too good for most of these horses, and that's not insulting them. They're wonderful horses. I mean, I would love to own Oscar Bonavina, Love in the Port. I would love to own Hardy by the Hill. So would everybody watching this show, but Muscle Mountain's about 4 lengths better than most of them and maybe 10 lengths better than some of the horses on that page. And that's all we've got. So for this crop, I would love to see Bolt for Brilliance come back. I think he will, because otherwise Muscle Mountain will win about 90% of the races he starts. And there's nothing wrong with that. Plenty of great trotters have done that over a long period of time, but it gets a bit repetitive for the punters. Yeah, so he's the key to the whole thing. In saying that, if you are looking at taking $1.70, Greg, consider this, he's going to have 13 or 14 horses in front of him. So that's why you don't take $1.70, because yes, he's better than them, but being off the unruly in most races, especially over 2 miles...
It's like being off 10 metres, isn't it?
Oh, it's like being off 30 metres by the time they step.
Yeah.
And when you see them settle, the leaders disappear because they get where they're going. The horse back on the unruly has to get into the running line, has to come all the way back across. Horses who start off the unruly in 2 mile races at Addington and Capacity Fields end up a mile off the leader.
Long way back.
Yeah. Yeah. So yes, he can still win from there, but you can't take $1.70 to find out.
No, just an update on Mataderos too. He's not 100%, so I'll get a report from the Duns this week, but he may not be taking his place in that race. Speaking of the Duns, let's have a look at the Trainers' Premiership and where that's at. And Robert and Jenna Dunn, RJ looking for another title, well clear over Mark Jones, who's had a cracking season, Michael House the same, and of course Mark and Nathan Purden. The anomaly there, Michael, is around Steve and Amanda Telfer, and of course it was Steve and Amanda Telfer and Hayden Cullen, so they don't appear on that page and clearly can't win the premiership this year, but we'll see what happens in the next 12 months.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's how that should work. I think Steve Telfer, who's the senior training partner, should keep his wins, and Steve Telfer should be on however many wins he's had. Because I think if you take, for example, the All Blacks are playing this week, just because 2 players drop out of the team doesn't mean the team doesn't play. And as a betting option, if I back the Telfers, I'm not sure if there's a refund on that, but there should be.
Yep.
Because just because they change their partnership doesn't mean you should lose your money. I don't think that makes any sense at all. Steve,
it is an anomaly though, it's not normal. It's not, halfway through a season there's not normally a change. And although in saying that the All-Stars makeup over the last 3 years has
100%.
been different.
And it means either betting on the premiership's nonsense.
Or don't, yeah.
And we can't have any lack of confidence in those. As long as one partner remains in a partnership or a senior partner, and this isn't a massive industry. It's not that hard to go, well, he's a senior partner. Telfer Racing or Team Telfer remains wherever they were on the premiership.
Yeah. And I think they're on about, if you combine them, they're about mid-40s, somewhere around there.
Away from that, the Duns are having a great season, well done. When you look at those lists, your brain automatically goes, oh, wow, to a couple of things. Mark Jones, super. And the Whites, good on them.
Yeah.
They're having a having a fantastic season without superstar horses. There's no $50,000 yearlings at their joint. So they are the 2 names who stand out on that list to me.
Yeah, and American Me's doing a good job for them as well. They've got you covered, heading hopefully towards a cup. 2, here's the Drivers' Premiership, and this is pretty predictable, but 101 he got to the other night, Blair, or actually on Sunday with a win at Ashburton, but Live On Legend got him past 3 figures once again. John Dunn having a great season. Sarah O'Reilly right on the cusp of 50 wins again. Sam Otley. So 2 of the top 4, Michael, in the female ranks, and that's fantastic to see, and just again reiterates just how talented some of our female drivers are.
Well, if you told people 4 years ago Sarah O'Reilly was going to be in the top 3 on the Drivers' Premiership and it would feel normal, that would be remarkable. And it's a wonderful testament to how hard she's worked at her craft, and she's a lovely young lady, so it's great to have her in the game. I'm a great believer, and trust me, Entain will be too, and this is going to be the theme of lots of things heading forward, is we need to be able to bet on everything. You need to be able to bet on absolutely everything if we're going to make enough money for when the tab at Entain starts sharing the money, that everybody gets a slice of the pie, including harness racing. Therefore, you can't bet on the Drivers' Premiership, usually, because it's basically irrelevant, because Blair wins it all the time. We need to be a bit more original. Best leading North Island driver, bunch people together.
Yep.
Who's
leading track driver, whatever it happens to be.
Exactly. Yep. It's dead money for us, largely, the Drivers' Premiership, because no one wants to back him, it's too short. And that's not Blair's fault, good on him. It's great to be that dominant, but yeah, we need to think a bit more about options around those sort of things. We're seeing them percolate through the galloping system with boosted odds for certain horses. I reckon we can do that with those Drivers' Premiership to get people cross-fertilised.
And I've also noticed Thursday night harness, the first couple of races, bonus back $50 if you finish 2nd, 3rd or 4th. They're definitely working those sort of innovations.
They do need to, when you log onto your account, it comes up your balance. It needs to say whether you're eligible for bonus bets.
Right.
At the moment, we're advertising bonus bets for people, but not everybody watching the show is eligible. Your account needs to tell you that.
Right.
Because there's nothing worse.
Surely those people know, though, whether they are or they aren't.
They don't know.
They would know, because if they run 2nd, 3rd or 4th, they wouldn't get a bonus bet.
Prime example, a $50 bonus bet's of no interest to me at all.
No, for sure.
But I put a bet on something at the Gallops like about 6 months ago to see if it worked, and I didn't get the money back because I'm a restricted gambler. That's fine, there's no issues.
Yep.
But saying to someone, we sent you an email 3 years ago, isn't good enough. If you advertise bonus bets back, if Air New Zealand advertised you can have fares for $200 and you went to buy your $200 fare to Melbourne and it said, but you can't have it, you'd say, what the hell is going on here? Now, what you need to do is load into the system, your account is not eligible for these. Flag it. Because at the moment, there are people, and here's the kicker, usually these are people who are regular gamblers who are the lifeblood of the industry. And they aren't eligible for all these offers. So they hear people like me on the radio Saturday morning, go get this, and then they go, you can't have it. And
That's a good point.
unless you load it onto their accounts, you just annoy them.
Yep.
They're like, well, hold on, why is everybody
I'm
getting...
not sure how many people this affects, but anyway,
Well,
the point's taken.
You know who it affects?
Yep.
Your prime customers. It doesn't affect Bob and Bill down the pub having a bet. It affects people who bet all the time. So yes, it's a small thing, but you can't advertise things and not allow people to have them, because in any other industry, you would be stopped by doing that by the government. They would say, you can't do that.
Well, you've addressed it, so I reckon they might address it too. As we go to a break here on Your Box Seat, brought to you by our stable of sponsors, new series of One on One is on every Monday night on Trackside. It's on YouTube and, of course, HRNZ if you want to tune in. The first one was Nikki Chilcott on Monday, and this young fella, Carter Dalgetty, is next. Family were there, Group 1 win, tick that box, and you did it with your mate.
Yeah, that was the coolest thing. To have the family there was awesome. But the Southland people were a massive part of that. Actually, they were so awesome. You know, the roar from the crowd was crazy, and coming in off the track, that Invercargill stand, it was just the applause and standing up of people. It was something I'd never seen before, and like to be at the centre of it with, as you said, my best mate, it was yeah, quite crazy.
Welcome back in to Your Box Seat. Time with Garrards to head across the Tasman, because the biggest race in world harness racing was run. Michael Guerin, you were there. It was over the 2,400 metres at Menangle, the Eureka. There was a lot of hype, a lot of talk leading into it, and a big crowd on track.
There was. It was somewhere between 7,000 and 10,000, and they did a really good job. It felt like a big deal. It's not New Zealand Cup Day, but let's not forget, Menangle's an hour outside Sydney. Would you get 20,000 to the New Zealand Cup, or was it Ashburton?
Well, you've been there plenty of times. Is it the biggest you've seen there?
I was there for the opening. The opening's
Yes.
bigger, but the opening of anything's always big. So here's the start of the race. Catch a Wave leads Captain Ravishing. And then the horse who pulls out now is Leap to Fame, who was the best horse in the race. Sitting in the 1-1 at this stage, about to be 3 back on the outside, is Encipher, the mare who got into the race, the only mare in the race. So Catchaway's having a pretty easy time, and he looks to not be going that fast, but he is a deceptive horse, because what we see is they're actually going a 151 mile rate, and that's without any great pressure from Grant Dixon. It's not like he's boring it up the leader. He's just a big fast horse, and Menangle's a fast track. So sitting back on the outside is Encipher, just doing nothing, 3 back on the outside. And when you watch Leap to Fame, he's such a wonderful horse that he covers all this ground and eventually breaks the leader, but that leaves him a sitting duck. And when I spoke to Grant Dixon last week, I said, look, what do you think? He said, my job is to try and beat the leader, but not leave myself a sitting duck. That's exactly what he did.
That's the second big race that's happened in. Obviously, he got beaten by Swayze at Albion Park as part of the Constellations in the Blacks of Fake. Were you surprised he moved so early? Because he did the same thing in the Blacks of Fake. Could he have, and this is being critical sitting in the stand, but could he have waited another half of the race before moving to Park, and would that have made a difference?
I don't think it would have made too much of a difference, because he still would have been in the running line covering space. He wouldn't have been facing the breeze.
But surely not sitting parked for an additional 800 metres has got to help you at the end of the race.
Well, he's covering the same distance. So I think it's only if being in the breeze seems to bother the horse. It doesn't seem to bother him. He's not a horse who gets his head on the side and seems to be annoyed.
He's just a beautiful animal, isn't he?
He is, he's lovely. It doesn't seem to be annoyed by sitting parked. Even in the Blacks of Fake, when he had a flat tyre, he didn't put his head on the side or start to struggle. He just seems to be fine out there. About here, you thought, okay, he's got the leader buggered, and obviously...
Were you surprised that the leader, Catch a Wave, the Miracle Mile winner, gave up so easily?
Absolutely. Very
Is
much
that the
so.
distance of the race?
I just think he's a big, hard-running horse, and I think he's going to struggle with longer distances for maybe the whole of his career. So here he is, the horse outside the lead has gone massive. He hits the lead, and he's just Luke McCarthy. Luke just gets him, the king of Menangle, the appropriate winner of the first Eureka, because in the last 10 years, the best trainers in Australia have been Emma Stewart and Clayton Tonkin, and the best driver for mine has been Luke McCarthy. So they combined to win the first Eureka.
Yep, well, and Cypher was driven by Luke McCarthy, and here's what he had to say to Brittany Graham post-race.
Luke McCarthy, there's not much in this sport that he hasn't won, but Luke, you've rewritten history again. The first Tab Eureka driver, L. McCarthy, congratulations.
Yeah, thanks Brittany, and just a huge thrill, trying to catch my breath actually. Thanks Aaron Bain and some Bloodstock for, entrusting me in the drive, and Emma and Clayton. Emma and Clayton really confident with this mare, and said she'd run a terrific race, and she did.
You know Leap to Fame so well, but she just chimed in. They've gone 26.5 third quarter, 27.1 on the way home, and she's run past what many are already considering as a champion. We've undersold her, and she's really stood up tonight.
Yeah, she was fantastic. I just I stepped her out of the gate a little bit. I just wanted to get a few of them wider ones behind me. Didn't want to be any worse than third over, and yeah, it just worked out fantastic, and she hit the line really good.
So many of your feature races you've prepared, but tonight you've stepped into the bike for the first time on this mare. It must be a different feeling, but what about the feeling tonight with this crowd? You love harness racing as much as I do. This is special.
Oh, yeah, amazing, and full credit to Harness Racing Australia and the industry for promoting the sport so well, and getting a crowd here like this tonight. And like you said, it's always a pleasure to drive good horses, and I've had a lot of luck with Clayton and Emma, and it was good to get another big one.
And what about the fact the mares in the last 3 or 4 years, and you think straight away of Amazing Dream and her performances a couple of years ago at the Constellations, they've really stepped up in these types of races.
Well, of the 3 and 4 mixed races,
Yes.
3 and 4 year olds, Amazing Dreams won one, so's Ladies in Red. And now this mare. One of the things I was absolutely certain about was that the 3-year-olds weren't the way to go. And unless it's Christian Cullen or Courage Under Fire, gee, you'd struggle to take
And the
a
Lost
3-year-old.
Storm had his chance, didn't he? I mean, he was 1-1 throughout.
He was ridiculously short. He'd had 4 starts as a 3-year-old. It's so hard for people to get their head around the difference between 3-year-olds racing those horses and racing the Miracle Mile winner. So next year there may be no 3-year-olds in the race. I could not take a 3-year-old, unless it was Christian Cullen.
Yep.
Maybe Lazarus. You just couldn't do it. Couldn't do it to yourself. Interesting thing being there, as a New Zealander, I wasn't thinking like that during the race night, but you think to yourself, how would a Cuda have gone sitting where Encipher is? Because obviously it's never going to be a race open to the Kiwis, and it doesn't need the Kiwis. There was only one horse in our country who could have gone on the race.
Yep.
Akuda's the only horse who would have got a start. But there's a lot of hype around A Leap to Fame. I think he's a great horse. I think he really has the potential to go on and be something special. But there's no evidence he's a dominant horse over an Akuda type horse. We're not going to see them together this year, but it's going to be really fun when we do see them.
If we can get them to the race by grins, that might be the...
Absolutely. And if I'm a slot holder for the race by grins, it's different from the Everest. You don't need to muck around and wait. Go get your horse now. You can always get another horse if it doesn't come. But I would be working really hard with Grant and Kevin Seymour to try and get Leap to Fame and secure him. I'm pretty sure they would rather be at Cambridge if they want to go to a race like that than in Perth.
No, I know that. He confirmed that in July. So
I would be straight after him.
Bit of Kiwi breeding there.
Akuda's obviously gone. Akuda's obviously going to go to Dobson. Self-assured copy, they'll go.
Yeah.
So if they're the top 3 in New Zealand, I'd be hunting Leap to Fame, maybe Captain Ratner, maybe Catch a Wave.
Yeah.
Pretty darn quickly.
You just mentioned Captain Ravishing then. He was actually pretty good, wasn't he? He got held up too.
The worst thing happened to Captain Ravishing was
he got the rap he got.
Well, he got to be called the best horse in the world, which is a very Australian thing. Sometimes we get into that stuff too, and it's happened once in the last 20 years we've had the best horse in the world. That was Lazarus, for only a very small window. We've also had the best driver in the world, Dexter Dunn. We don't need to just make stuff up. And poor old Captain Ravishing, I was talking to the Connections the other day, and they said, we know it's all rubbish. And it was really good to hear them say that. He's a wonderful horse, and one day he's going to do something amazing.
He did a pretty good job the other night because on his preparation.
He was beaten by 3 lengths. Like the best horse in the world would be beaten by 3 lengths. We just need to cool our jets on that stuff, because you're putting pressure on a horse which it can only get people annoyed with the horse.
Yep.
And you can't have the best horse in the world twice with 2 different horses in 6 months.
No, exactly.
The world
Otherwise, the next horse that beats it's the best horse in the world, is it?
The world isn't Australia, and the world sure as hell isn't New Zealand.
No.
So the people can do what they want with it. It's up to them, the words they say, but all you do is set the horse up for a fall, and poor old Captain Ravishing, who now hasn't barely won a race this year apart from the Bonanza, anything she does is not good enough anymore.
No, exactly. $1 million earner now in Cypher. They've had some really good horses, Safari and Guarantee, but $1 million earner for Emma Stewart and Clayton Tonkin. And there was a little bit of Kiwi breeding there. Cavort, who won 15 races, is a daughter of Busy Girl, who's a daughter of True Lies, who the courts trained. But Busy Girl, when that mare was bred, was actually bred by Birchbrook Breeding, which is David and Catherine Butt. So bit of Kiwi interest there. Hey, this horse we just talked about that might come to the race by Grins, Rock and Roll Do, did this in the Len Smith Mile. 151.1, sat parked outside Spirit of St. Louis, who is nominated for the IRT New Zealand Cup. Rock and Roll Do won't come for it. He's going back to Victoria and going around in the Victoria Cup where he's right in the market. But this was a smart drive by Mick Stanley, dominated from the park position, and the horse they call Hendo is back.
Such a disappointing in some ways New Zealand Cup Carnival last year, because he was good enough to be a factor there, but the standing start just stuffed him. Great drive, because he knows that Spirit of St. Louis is vulnerable. He's a touch on the weak side when he gets eyeballed. He drove him beautifully. I think he's the best of the open class horses in Australia, alongside Honolulu Bay. And then obviously the 4-year-olds are under them, but they're open class horses now, but I'm not talking about them. So he's in a Victoria Cup, which could see a bunch of those horses together with maybe Leap to Fame. It's going to be a really good Victoria Cup. The Victoria Cup ostensibly will be stronger than the New Zealand Cup, but all of it's going to be a lot more fun when we can meld them all together in some capacity. I'm not sure where that will be. Maybe the Miracle Mile or the Hunter Cup. But at the moment, we've got our New Zealand Cup and they've got their bunch of horses, and it's almost like they're running parallel to each other. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
He's $1.75 Leap to Fame to win the Victoria Cup, so he's pretty short for that.
Well, Leap to Fame's problem's very simple. He doesn't have naturally high gate speed. He can leave the gate, there's no issue with that, but there's other horses who can leave the gate more.
Yep.
And there's only one Leap to Fame. There's a lot of horses in Victoria who have stablemates, and they aren't going to be getting out of his way. Catchaway's
420, Rock and Roll Do's 460. I think he's back right in the right sort of form.
He's a very similar horse to Lazarus, and he has the same problem Lazarus had as an open class horse. He doesn't have high gate speed. Lazarus had to sit parked to win an Inter-Dominion and Hunter Cup, and this horse has now tried to had to sit parked in 2 big races. At some stage, good horses tend to have gate speed. Grant's going to need to teach him to run the gate and dominate races, because if he can't, he is not going to be the master of his own destiny.
No, correct. And he was very, very good in his last 2. And of course, the Inter-Dominion is on his back doorstep. He's $1.60 to win that. Be interesting to see who turns up for that. We have some more information on the Inter-Dominions over the next couple of weeks. Of course, the last time they'll be run at Albion Park. All right, let's now go to a piece I did the other day with Ricky Donnelly. He's a real character. He's doing a magnificent job in the Canterbury region as the starter. So we got an insight into what it involves on a race night.
Rick, great opportunity to have a chat to you about starting, not only at Addington Raceway, but all around the Canterbury region. What year are you up to now?
This is my 3rd year as the #1 starter in Canterbury, so yeah, pleased.
All right, you did a good 6 or 7 year apprenticeship, so how have you found it? And you got chucked in pretty much in the deep end at Cup Week that time, so I'm sure it was a big learning curve.
Yeah, big learning curve, a lot of stress we got through, and you know, we've gone forward and we're pretty pleased with it.
All right, we're going to go on the mobile very shortly and see what the procedure is there, but how does a race night work? So you get your race book from Brian Rabbit, for example, everything's marked in your book. You would have done all your homework prior to coming to the race meeting, and then you've got a team that help you out on race night. How many staff do you have?
Yes, we have 4 staff, so we 4 staff each night. We have 12 to choose from, and we just roster them on.
Yeah, all right. So their roles are pretty much governed by what you tell them, but these guys are pretty experienced horsemen, aren't they?
Yeah, one of the criteria of the game is got to be very experienced. We're dealing with a lot of situations and high tense situations with animals, so yeah.
All right, mobiles are pretty straightforward. You get them behind the gate, you let them go. The stands are a bit more challenging, but it's been a wee while since I've heard too many complaints, so you must be doing something right.
Yeah, that's good. You know, you're always going to have your critics, but I think we've got a good rapport, we've got a good thing going. It's not us against them, we're together, we've got a good product and we've got to get them away. And yeah, guys will come to and see me beforehand, and if they've got a problem, and we just work it out basically.
Yeah, your philosophy is to get them all away as fairly as possible and give everyone their chance.
Pretty much. I get just as much pleasure out of seeing the horses go away than everyone else.
You're walking around like you own the joint.
I do for this race.
So, mate, you blow the whistle about, what, 5 minutes out?
Yep.
Is that what it is?
So we get the 5-minute call from the TAB.
Yep.
Then I'll get a 2-minute and a 1-minute call. It's all about running races on time. Anything over a minute, we get bumped to another channel in Australia and they lose revenue. So time is essential.
All right. So the horses score up here. This is the 1980 start, and you don't really need to give most of these guys and girls instructions because so many of them have done it so often, haven't
Yes,
they?
very much so. And yeah, they'll go in numerical order, and yeah, everything's sweet. Thank you. So arms in and out. A lot of people don't realise that that's my throttle, so I have the speed until the start point, just so I can go at certain speeds at certain parts of the track to determine a fair start. So we have 8 and 4. So 8 off the front, 4 off second row. Come now, Gemma.
Dave Gaffney there, good horseman. You know, knows what he's doing, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's my 2IC man for here, and has a starter's license too. So I've got a GPS speedo here, and just determines my speed to make sure it's fair. And at the hundreds, I should be doing about 38 to 40 k's, and at the 50, be doing 42 plus 50 at the get-go. Come back down now. Lights looking bloody good. Fire away.
And that's about as straightforward as it gets, mate.
Beautiful start, I'd say.
Congratulations, Riley. I'm sure it was a huge thrill.
Yeah, no, it was pretty awesome. Yeah.
What about the opportunity to drive for one of the master trainers, Paul Nairn, out of my way, winning at Addington Raceway? There's a few boxes ticked there, isn't there?
Yeah, I didn't expect to get the drive. It all just happened so fast with the help from Davey Butt and that. So yeah, it was pretty awesome to even get the win.
Yeah, talk me through the race because you work your way to the lead, and when you get to the front in those colours, I'm picking the confidence levels were probably going up as the race went on.
Yeah, well, I had never been in front, so I was kind of told if I do get to the front to press on a bit. I didn't know if I was going the right speed or not until I crossed the line. I'd obviously done a half decent job. Yeah.
Yeah, but a big thrill for you. Now tell me about your relationship with Robert and Jenna Dunn, and obviously Johnny's there as well. You've been there 3 years, I understand.
Yeah,
so
about 3 years.
Why harness racing? I know there's a family background, but why did you want to get involved?
I just started as a stable hand really first. It's not till you start like working there, loving the horses, got to start driving and that. So yeah, just get addicted to it, don't you?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
you've got win number 1. Congratulations in doing that, and yeah, I'm sure it won't be your last. So good luck with the future.
Cool. Thank you very much for that.
So Riley Harrison, she's a real character. She's a big part of the Diamond Racing team of Robert and Jenna Dunn, and of course John as well. And I think she had about 20 odd drives to get that first win. But what about driving for the Master? Paul Nairn got on out of my way. Davey Butt had a bit of a yarn to him and said, look, give her a chance. Winning at Addington Raceway, your first race, that's pretty special.
It'd be hard with Paul, because Paul's not the most gregarious person in the world. He wouldn't exactly be giving poor Riley about 10 different sets of instructions, which is good or bad. And I suppose when you drive one of Paul's, you know what you're pretty much getting,
She was really
which is fitness.
Yeah, she was really honest about it too. She'd never been in front in a race, and she said once she got there, she didn't know if she was going fast enough or not, but yeah, she got the job done, and they actually left her on for the next start as well, the Connections, which was a nice thing to do.
I think it's great you can get those first wins for people. I think it's really important. We have a lot less of them in the North Island because we have less drivers. By the way, Nathan Delaney had his first training success recently. Well done to you, Nathan. Just on the one-on-ones, you mentioned Nikki Chilcott. I know Carter Dalgetty's going to be a really good one. Who else is coming up on those? Because it's rare these days in any of the codes to get the chance to peel back the layers on somebody quite like that. So who else will harness racing people have to look forward to?
Got a couple of beauties.
Oh, yeah?
All right. John Dickey, really looking forward to that.
When I think beauty, I don't naturally think of John Dickey.
No, but I think you'll enjoy the conversation. And obviously Old Town Road and the experience he's having with his son Josh at the moment, part owning that horse. So that's really interesting. The O'Reilly brothers. There's 5 of them. 4 of them have been very successful trainers and drivers. And Dennis, or Din as he's known, is the character of the family. So we'll hear from those as well. Malcolm Shin, a man that has done a lot of things in harness racing, but we don't see a lot of him or hear a lot of him. He's very private in that regard. I've got a chance to sit down with him and have a chat too. Zachary Butcher, who's just a character and would fit into any social situation in the world. I know you've discussed that before, is another one.
That's great.
Too.
So where can people go to get those?
Every Monday there's a new one released.
Okay.
You can go to HRNZ, it'll be on there, it'll be on YouTube, and it's on Trackside. First play is on a Monday night. After that other show that you're part of,
more shows.
That weigh-in sort of thing.
Great to have Nikki on. Great because she's done a wonderful job, and after that back injury she had 25 years ago, whatever it was, she's done a remarkable job to just keep working as hard as she does. Frenetically hard worker, Nikki.
Yeah, that certainly comes out in that interview.
Just one for you. We're recording this on Tuesday morning, by the way. We've got to get a standardised field set up in New Zealand. This thing about having, for example, this week Alexander Park's open, fields closed on Monday night.
Addington, you mean?
No, Alexander Park's fields for this week. So Cambridge, Cambridge, they're out.
Yep.
They're out. Menangle was raced Saturday night. They're out. Now, I know things are done old school down home in Canterbury. I get it. I understand, but it's not good enough. As I said, this whole machine's changed, and if anybody who doesn't catch up to it's going to be left behind. Everything's about turnover now because Entain want their slice of the pie. That's why they're running the whole ship for free, and we've got to drive turnover as best we can.
Because we've got 5 years, Michael, to at least retain, if not extend, our market share.
Those who get it right are going to get more coverage, and those who get it wrong aren't. Addington and Ashburton, I don't care where it is, all the harness racing fields in this country, if at all possible, have to be out Monday night. And you know what? The market should be open Tuesday lunchtime or Wednesday. The fields aren't going to change much because at the moment, which harness racing seems obsessed by, leaving nominations open for another night, nothing changes on Tuesday morning. If you've got a horse racing Friday night, you don't work at Tuesday morning and go, hoo, we're off to Addington. You don't. And if we keep acting like this is some little rugby club thing where we can just chop and change training days, it's rubbish. Get the fields out. The gallops open at 10 o'clock on Wednesday morning. That's when their fields come out. And after that, you're getting very little coverage. Because guess who's racing this week? Legato. Prow West would be racing some Saturdays coming up shortly. I'm the racing editor of the New Zealand Herald. I know when your slots are. And if you're not going to take your slot, someone else is going to take it. And I don't want to hear the excuses. If we're not going to get this done, don't moan when in next year or the year after we get less money for harness racing.
Yep.
That's the facts of the matter. And anybody who tells you different doesn't understand who's paying their wages. Right,
where are we racing around the nation this week? We kick things off on Thursday with a couple of meetings. We're in the south. We're going to Wyndham, and they have 9 races. 12:35 is the start time down there. Artie's Express is racing down there, so that's an interesting
It'll go around
pathway.
$1.10, maybe $1.08.
Yep, 10 races for Cambridge, 5:29 is the first from there. Addington have got a terrific program. Avon City Ford have been with the New Brighton Cup for so long. It's at Group 3, $40,000. And ITM, who sponsor the whole night around Avon City Ford, sponsor the ordeal. And Methven, the first grass track race meeting, 12 o'clock is the kick-off point for there. And we'll have a preview, of course, on SENZ Trot Stall, 11 o'clock. That kicks on every Sunday morning. Blue September has started, Michael. So we've got got this wonderful promotion that Harness Race New Zealand put together underway. I think they've already raised from the first weekend about $7,000. Look, there's 12 ambassadors. If you have a bet and you back one of them wearing the blue pants, make a donation. There's plenty of options for you.
You can sponsor your favourite driver if you want. And you know,
we do. We sponsored Todd Mitchell, who needs to drive a few more winners. Because
or less winners, because it'll cost us less.
Well, last year I think he maybe only drove 3. So
hrnz.co.nz, you can sponsor your favourite driver. It's a great cause, or you can just contribute if you back a winner, as Gregory said. So hrnz.co.nz, best racing site in the country. So much information there. Preview every race meeting, review every race meeting. So that's the place to go for stuff we can't always cover on the show.
All right, so we're recording, as you mentioned, on a Tuesday morning. So finding a best bet of the week. I think we're going to do it differently, Michael. We'll talk about the races on the show, but on a Thursday on the Box Seat Twitter handle, we will send out the best bet. But for this week, you've found one for us at Cambridge.
Yeah, winner's time in the first race falls into an easier grade. Crystal Hackett, who's driving really well, jumps into sulky, and it's going to be a good each way chance. There's a couple of really short-priced favourites coming up in the two-year-old races, like Kiss, who was excellent last week at Alexandra Park. But we're going to try and find you a bit more value when we can. So if you're looking for one on Thursday at Cambridge, winner's time might be a nice each-way chance to start your meeting.
All right, and we'll certainly send out those tips each and every week via Twitter. So if you get on there, you'll be able to find those out. Michael, we're back. It's nice to be back. It's terrific to have the support of Entain and the TAB. By the way, they're sponsoring the Junior Free-for-All on New Zealand Cup Day, and that might be a nice bit of synergy because Dean Shannon's horse Merlin may very well line up in that. As we know, Republican Party went through that race last year, went on to the Derby, and there's every chance that Merlin, because he won't have another option probably on a day like that to be able to line up unless he goes in the Cup.
One thing I'll say about the whole Entain deal is, yes, we're in bed with the right people, quite clearly, but you've got to work with them. Like, we have to base everything now, because it doesn't cost us anything, around driving turnover and being available and being open and transparent. And that's everything. If you're involved in harness racing in any capacity, but particularly the administrators who hold the keys to the castle, think, is this going to help drive turnover? And it's amazing all the things, like getting Addington and all fields, I'm not picking on Addington, all fields open Monday night, if possible. Because if you don't do that, the whole machine goes back a day and another day and another day. And the keys to the castle now have to be turned. It's all about driving turnover, because if we're not doing our part, they'll just say, you know who is doing their part? Aussie Gallops, the Gallops, maybe the Hounds. And I've seen it in Australia. Greyhounds have taken over from harness in Australia. So we have to think laterally and think, how can we do this best for the industry? And one of those things is having the fields available as soon as possible. And the TAB then has a responsibility to produce head-to-heads and produce all those cool markets and treat us with the same respect they treat the Gallops. It's a symbiotic relationship, but you have to be part of that relationship, and that's what harness racing needs to get its head around.
Yep, and we've already changed because we've come back 3 weeks early with a lead towards these big races at Addington Raceway this week. Big thank you to Entain TAB allowing us to use the studios again, and of course to our stable of sponsors who've all got behind this show again. They don't have to do that. They know the importance of telling your stories though, so a big thank you to them. Michael and I will see you in 7 days' time.